Now, also remember, as Democrats fuel even more baseless tinfoil hat conspiracy theories, this time a cover-up by the Attorney General Barr, look at this law. It's the obstruction law, 18 U.S.C. 1505. Look at the language. It requires intent. Any obstruction case hinges on whether someone was corruptly trying to influence the investigation. I think that's like if you have subpoenaed emails, the intent to delete them, clean out your hard drive with bleach bit, bust up your devices with hammers, and take out SIM cards. That might show intent. Joining us now to explain all this is the attorney for the president, former mayor, New York City, Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, a 9-month FBI, they concluded, no there. We had the House Intel Committee, no collusion. Bipartisan Senate Committee, no collusion. Attorney General Barr quoted Robert Mueller, no collusion. Now they've moved on to this. Let's talk about the law that I just mentioned.
Well, it's absolutely disgraceful, Sean. I mean, the reality is that to obstruct justice, you have to threaten, you have to impede, you have to get in the way of somebody. Let's go back to the one that Weinstein and all of his angry Democrats used to push, which is when the president allegedly said, the president said this conversation never took place. And he said to Flynn, you know, I hope you can see fit to drop this or not pursue this. First of all, you don't have obstruction by hope. You have obstruction by coercion, threat, I'll break your legs, I'll take your food away, or I'll kidnap your children. I prosecuted a lot of obstruction cases. Nobody ever started an obstruction sentence with I hope. And nobody ever did obstruction by putting out a legal memo for the whole world to see. And we're going to find out in a week or two how accurate Bill Barr's summary was. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be 100% accurate. Bill Barr is a great lawyer, and he is an extraordinarily honorable man. I can't say that for the congressmen who are making all these wild, crazy, insane threats. Their claim of obstruction against the Attorney General of the United States is no better than the 2-year claim of obstruction by the angry Democrats that tried to claim the president was obstructing. The president didn't obstruct anything. And the best evidence of that is they completed their darn investigation. How the heck did it get obstructed? Nothing was obstructed.
And by the way, it was very clear in the Attorney General's letter that both he and Rod Rosenstein, who appointed the special counsel, decided very quickly, without any consideration of the Justice Department rule about whether or not you can indict a sitting president, but more importantly, it was being discussed the whole time. And there's also, beyond intent, there's no crime. So the president saying, I hope Flynn doesn't go to jail after serving his country, or firing Comey, which he had a right to do, or saying it's a witch hunt is not. Nobody was obstructed.
This would be the obstruction case to end all obstruction cases. In other words, somebody obstructed to obstruct an investigation of a non-crime that he didn't commit, that he was innocent of, and then it turned out he didn't obstruct. That they interviewed 500 witnesses, got 1.4 million documents, got every wish fulfilled, and engaged in some practices that are truly horrendous, like raids in the middle of the night, bringing CNN in to photograph raiding Stone's house, for example. Leaking now. I mean, everybody misses the real point here. The real wrongdoing are the prosecutors who just leaked. I thought Mueller didn't leak. Ha!
Yeah,
you believe that one, and I'll sell you the Brooklyn Bridge.
Let me change topics for a second. In a few days, there's an election in Israel. Both of us have been friends with Prime Minister Netanyahu for a long time. You now have this crazy opponent, Benny Gantz is his name, who actually is pushing, he's saying to the people of Israel, oh, Putin is trying to help Bibi, Trump is trying to help Bibi, and without any evidence whatsoever. And I'm thinking, if there's one guy that has had moral clarity and been a Churchillian figure, understanding the moral imperatives of our time, it's Prime Minister Netanyahu on Golan, on Jerusalem, etc.
Well, maybe there's a consistency here. What the president did was to help Israel, twice, with the embassy and then with Golan and many other things. The president had to reverse the betrayal of Israel by Obama. And so, I mean, the president has been a great president for Israel. But then also he comes after Obama, who was the worst president for Israel.
It's the best relationship we've ever had.
It just so happens that in helping Israel, he helps the prime minister. But what is he supposed to do? Not help Israel?
This has been the best relationship between Jerusalem, now being the recognized capital, Golan Heights for protection. I hope the people of Israel understand this is the best it's ever been.
They've also developed a real good alliance with the Arab countries around them, so that they pose now a real substantial defense to Iran.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good to see you.
It's been 2 weeks since Robert Mueller finished his investigation and found what many suspected, well, a few suspected, but some of us suspected it pretty vehemently from the very beginning. There was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the government of Russia. So to that extent, the case is closed. But members of Mueller's team want to continue the allegations. In a series of leaks to the New York Times, they have complained that the report, despite finding no criminal activity, should be released because it is, quote, damaging to the White House. In other words, prosecutors working for the federal government no longer see their job as enforcing the law. Instead, the point is a political vendetta and an attempt to influence narratives about people they dislike. How does it make you feel? Is that a proper role of a prosecutor working for the federal government? Glenn Greenwald co-founded The Intercept, and he joins us tonight. Glenn, thanks very much for coming on. What do you make of this most recent New York Times story about what apparently is in the report we haven't seen?
Well, it's similar to the journalism that has fueled the 3-year hoax that has drowned U.S. discourse, namely that the New York Times, the Washington Post gives anonymity to totally unknown people to make claims that are completely bereft of any specifics, unaccompanied by any evidence whatsoever, so that it's impossible to analyze. And then journalists see it and then start celebrating online on social media and cable news as though it's some sort of a smoking gun. I don't really have personally any problem with having the Mueller report published, since I don't think that in this case a special counsel is just acting as a prosecutor. They're also there to say what actually happened. I think we'd all benefit from that, so that we no longer have to have CIA leaks trying to manipulate our brain. But the one thing we do know, Tucker, about this report, like we know very little, but the one thing we do know that they've said is that these complaints from these anonymous leakers, whoever they are, these anonymous objectors, they're not complaining about the section of Barr's letter that reported that Mueller found no collusion. They're only complaining about the part where Mueller said it's impossible to say one way or the other whether Trump obstructed justice. So it's amazing that actually the part about the no collusion got bolstered, because even these malcontents who are complaining to the New York Times anonymously are saying we don't have a problem with the section finding no collusion. We only have a problem with the obstruction issue.
What about all the people over the last 2 years who've been dismissed, and you're one of them, as agents of the Russian government? Where's the justice for them? Where do they get their reputations back?
I think one of the things that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years is that journalism, more than ever, is a profession of complete groupthink and mob rule, in part because it's really difficult to be a journalist these days because of financial constraints. Big media outlets are laying off huge numbers of people. So if you're a young journalist, the last thing you want to do is stick your head up and challenge the prevailing consensus, because you could lose your job, or if you lose your job, it'd be really hard to get another job. And also Twitter makes it so that journalists constantly talk to one another and create these sort of gangs that are designed to punish anybody who challenges their orthodoxies. And I think journalism has completely disgraced itself at the exact time that they're claiming that a grave danger to the republic is that Trump is demeaning journalists. They've done more to demean their profession with this behavior, calling people Russian agents who question them, or Trump supporters, or apologists, or denialists. They have a whole long line of accusations and new terms to stigmatize anyone who questions their dissent. And it's really effective for a lot of people who, unlike us, don't have established platforms, and it's been really effective to prevent them from being questioned or challenged.
So here's a question I want to ask you for 2 years. You're making your critique from the left. You're on the left, and you're not a Trump fan. That's a tough position to take, and you've maintained it this whole time. Why were you able to maintain an independent perspective on this when so many others weren't?
You know, it's amazing, because if you think about it, the question is there evidence to demonstrate that there was collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government is completely bereft of ideology. It doesn't matter whether you're on the left or the right. You're just looking at evidence. It's just an epistemological question. And one of the things that has happened is that everything is so tribalized. So they actually want you, if you're to maintain your good standing on the left, to lie. They're demanding you lie. They're demanding you say that you see evidence and you see a convincing case for a conspiracy theory, even if you don't really see it. And I have to say that unlike establishment journalists like Jeremy Scale, Matt Taibbi, and myself, who have the protection of being established, there were a lot of young journalists like Michael Tracy and Aaron Mate and a bunch of others who are very vulnerable, who have the courage to incur the wrath of this profession in order to do what journalists should do, which is to say what it is that they think without any fear of who it angers, and very few of them are willing to do that, and they deserve a lot of credit for that.
I agree completely. We've had Tracy on the show a number of times, another brave journalist. Glenn Greenwald, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Tucker.